The first and last games of NBA legends' careers. We know about NBA legends and what they did in the NBA, but we often forget about how good these guys actually were and the hype that they had around them when they came into the league. So it's important to look at their first games, and it's also important to remember where they were at when their legendary careers were over and how things ended off after everything they went through. So that's why it's important to look at their last. So let's get into it. In Wilt Chamberlain's first ever NBA game, he came in and dominated right away, showing why he was going to be the most unstoppable force in the league for the rest of his career. Because in his very first game against the Knicks, he played all 48 minutes and put up 43 points and 28 rebounds on 63% shooting in a game the Philadelphia Warriors obviously won. And this was the start of his rookie year where he won both Rookie of the Year and League MVP. Based on how Wilt played in high school and college, it was no surprise that he was going to come into the game and put up these type of numbers. But even the fact that he did that had to have had the rest of the NBA terrified. And by his last NBA game, he was already known as an NBA legend. He had dominated for 14 years, at the time setting nearly every single record in the book. In the last game though, it was also against the Knicks in Game 5 of the 1973 NBA Finals, which the Lakers lost both the game and the series 4-1. With no fault to Wilt though, who even in his very last NBA game at 36 years old, played all 48 minutes again and had 23 points and 21 rebounds. And it was another no surprise that he came up short of the NBA championship, considering he made 6 finals in his career and only won 2 of them. Then we have Michael Carter Williams, and okay, I know he's not an NBA legend, but we make an exception for him because he had a legendary first game, so he deserves a mention. Because in that game against the defending champ LeBron-led Miami Heat, he put up 22 points, 12 assists, 7 rebounds, and 9 steals, almost giving him a quadruple double in his very first game. And Carter Williams would go on to have several more triple doubles in his rookie year and win the Rookie of the Year award. Even though his team was terrible, he was still by far the best rookie that season, averaging 17, 6, and 6. But it's kind of weird how things turned out, because ever since then, he was only really a bench player and fell off more and more over time. To the point now where he's 29 years old and in his prime, but has found himself out of the NBA. And in his last game, he did put up pretty impressive 15 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists. But overall, he's just an okay player off the bench, and injuries have really gotten in his way. But maybe once he gets healthy, he won't deserve to be on this list anymore because he'll be back in the league. Allen Iverson also came into the NBA on fire after getting drafted first overall. And in his first ever game against the Milwaukee Bucks, he put up 30 points and 6 assists. And even though they lost the game, with that coming from your rookie point guard in his first game, that's definitely not a night to be upset about. And neither was his rookie season, full of all-time great moments, like when he crossed Michael Jordan, put up a 50-point game and 5 straight 40-point games before eventually being named Rookie of the Year. And that very first game was a very good indicator of things to come. And while AI gave us many more great moments down the line, we all know that his career got pretty derailed by his off-court attitude and issues that saw him bounce around a lot of different NBA teams towards the end for him. He contemplated retirement in 2009, but decided to sign back with the 76ers for one final year in 2010. It wasn't great, he didn't play that good, and Philly had a 27-55 record. But even then, his season was cut short when he stepped away in February of that season to take care of his daughter who was dealing with health issues, ultimately making his last ever NBA game February 20th, 2010, which was a 30-point blowout loss to the Chicago Bulls, where he put up 13 points and 3 assists on 38% shooting. So not the best way to go out. Now, Lamar Odom isn't necessarily an NBA legend, but based on his first game, you would have thought he was headed in that direction. He came into the league as a 6'10" power forward that played like a traditional perimeter player. He was a guy that really would have fit in good in today's game. But in his very first NBA game, he put up 30 points, 12 rebounds, 2 steals, and 2 blocks in what was one of the best rookie debuts in NBA history. And it makes sense, the league had rarely ever seen a player his size play with that style. So he had a great first few years on the Clippers, but by the end of his career, sadly, things took a turn. Because by this point, he had become one of the best 6 men of all time on the Lakers, winning that award and helping them to 2 titles. But when they randomly tried trading him as a part of that failed Chris Paul trade, was when his career self-destructed, and eventually he'd end his career on the Clippers where it all started, but only averaged 4 points, 3 rebounds, and 1 assist a game just 2 years after winning the 6th Man of the Year award. And his very last game was a playoff loss to the Grizzlies, where he started but only put up 7 points and 2 rebounds. On the other hand, it was clear Dwayne Wade was going to be a superstar from the start. In his very first game, the Heat were playing the 76ers, and even though they lost, he led the team with 18 points that night. And at this time in 2003, Miami didn't really have any other veterans on the roster, so it was good for them to see that he was already starting to lead the way early on. And he did, because in year 1, he became their best player, led them all the way to the second round of the postseason, and was the top 3 rookie that year. Then fast forward nearly 20 years later, where he had won multiple championships and bounced around a few teams, but ended up back on the Heat for one final season, where he played great in his new role off the bench. And by this point, even though the Heat weren't contenders thanks to Chris Bosh's early retirement, D-Wade still made the most of it, and his last year was his farewell tour. Well, he started in his very last game against the Nets, and in it, suffered another loss. But just like his first, he made it memorable, where he put up only the 5th triple-double of his career, consisting of 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists. Sure, it wasn't the perfect scenario, but it does does go down as one of the best last games ever, while Oscar Robertson had one of the best first games ever. The main thing Oscar's known for when it comes to basketball is triple doubles, and he wasted no time getting started with them. In his first ever game, he recorded 21 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists. And it was no surprise that he'd come into the league the way he did, because in college he spent 3 years for the Cincinnati Bearcats, where he finished with a 79-9 record overall, and at the time was the all-time NCAA scorer when he left. And as an athletic 6'5" point guard, it made sense. He was the first of his kind, especially back then in the 60s when he played. Now fast forward to the end of his career, and he had dominated the league in ways no one had ever seen, and done things still to this day no one has ever done since. Well, eventually though, he got tired of putting up those stats and still losing on the Kings, so he went to the Bucks and won a title with Kareem, and almost won a second in his very last season. As a matter of fact, his last ever NBA game was Game 7 of the 1974 NBA Finals against the Celtics, who of course ended up winning. And it was clear at this point that Oscar was past his prime, because in this clutch game, he played 46 minutes, but only recorded 6 points and 11 assists on 2 of 11 from the field. But also don't let that distract you from how important he still was to this team, because after he retired, even with Kareem still on it, the Bucks fell to a 38-44 record without him. Shaq's first and last NBA games went a little differently though. When he was drafted first overall, the Orlando Magic already had a couple established players who outplayed him in his first game. Shaq put up a still impressive 12 points and 18 rebounds, but the lack of scoring was due to Nick Anderson coming out to start the year with 42 points and Dennis Scott with 27, which was a huge thanks to now having the presence of Shaq down low. Well, after his historic time in the NBA, the end of his career wasn't so memorable. He bounced around the league in his last few seasons and went up on the Celtics' big three trying to win a ring. But honestly, the team did play pretty good with Shaq and went 19-3 in games Shaq played over 20 minutes. But due to so many injuries, he missed 45 games and the first round of the playoffs, and only played 2 games in round 2, and his very last was game 4 against the Heat, where he played 3 minutes and 31 seconds and didn't record a single stat. So it's clear Shaq could still kinda go at even 37 years old, but his body just gave out from under him. The GOAT Michael Jordan's first ever NBA game wasn't really as great as you might have expected. Now everyone knew he was going to be a star when he was drafted, and in his first game he showed a little bit of everything, because in it the Bulls were playing the Bullets, and he recorded 16.7 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 blocks, and 2 steals. Sure, he only shot 31% from the field, but he showed up and proved that he could and would do it all on both ends. And it only helps his case that from there on out he would proceed to have one of the best rookie seasons of all time. Then we know the story of Jordan's career: multiple retirements and winding up on the Wizards before going on a farewell tour in the 2003 season. In that year, MJ got a standing ovation in every single away game they played, and in his last in Chicago, the ovation lasted 4 straight minutes. The Heat retired the 23 jersey even though he never played for them, and his last ever NBA game came in Philadelphia against the 76ers, where when the fourth quarter started and Jordan was on the bench, the crowd started chanting "We want Mike," so he was put in the game, and when it ended, he received a 3-minute standing ovation from his teammates, his opponents, and the entire arena. Oh, and by the way, he ended the game with 15 points, 4 assists, and 4 rebounds. Then for a few rapid-fire non-NBA legends first and last games that I thought were notable, they're kinda random, but I still wanted to mention them. OJ Mayo was selected 3rd overall and thought to be the next superstar of the league. His first few seasons were a good start at that, but his first game not so much, when he recorded only 10 points and 2 assists on 5 of 20 from the field. And of course, his last game, he never knew it was coming, because it was only year 8 for him when he got a 2-year ban from the league. But in that last game, he played 25 minutes as a starter for the Bucks and recorded 2 points. Jahlil Okafor was also taken 3rd overall and had a very impressive rookie season and an even better first game. Sure, this is when Philly was terrible, but he still put up 26-7 on 62% from the field, outplaying Nerlens Noel. And it was pretty much all downhill from that first season until he found his way out of the NBA only 5 years later, where in his last game for the Pistons against the Heat, he scored 7 points and 5 rebounds. And he's just a prime example of a real solid player playing in the wrong era. Andrew Bynum made history in his first NBA game, becoming the youngest player to ever play in the league at 17 years and 244 days old. In his first game, he only played 5 minutes and recorded 2 blocks and 2 rebounds, but I guess it makes sense based on him being that age. His career though ended in disaster, with him being highly immature after leaving the Lakers and also suffering knee injuries. The knee set him back, but his attitude was what kept him out of the league at only 26 years old. In that last game though, he surprisingly put up 15-9 off the bench before his knee injury took him out for the season in what was his last. Let me know what you thought of these players' first and last games, and if you want to see a part 2 to this video, because we still have a lot of NBA greats we can go through. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.